Once you've learned the basics of adding text to a button design, you may, of course, want to get a little more sophisticated with the various attributes that you can adjust for that text. Let's take a look at some of the details of those text attributes. First off, in addition to the basics of adjusting the size by, for example, clicking the plus or the minus button to increase or decrease the size, there's also a pop-up where you can essentially choose the scale at which you want to adjust that size. And so if you'd like a little bit finer control, instead of 1, you could use 0.5 or 0.3, for example, to get smaller increases or decreases in the size of that text as you click the plus or minus buttons. In addition, you can choose a slider. So for example, if I start to drag on the font size slider, if I release the mouse, I can use the arrow keys on the keyboard in order to increase or decrease the value. And so, for example, the right arrow key to increase the font size in this case, or the left arrow key on the keyboard to decrease the font size. There are also options to flip the text, so that, for example, if you needed mirrored text, you could flip vertically or flip horizontally just by clicking the applicable button. You can also change the overall appearance of the text by choosing a particular font. You can see I have a very basic font here selected, Arial, but I can click that pop-up and then scroll through a number of available fonts. And notice that the pop-up shows us a preview of what that font will actually look like. Once you've selected a font, you can also adjust the attributes for that font with a button for bold that you can click to turn on or off that bold setting, as well as italic and underline. And to the right of those options, you'll find a set of buttons for alignment, so we can have our text aligned to the left, centered, or aligned to the right. In this case, I've used carriage returns to have my text on multiple lines, and so I can use the line spacing slider in order to determine how close together or far apart those lines of text will appear. Below that is a letter spacing slider where I can spread out or squeeze together the individual letters that form each of the words in my text. We can rotate the text, of course, either by using the rotation slider or by dragging the handle up above the text box to rotate the text box into the desired orientation. We can also reduce the opacity for the text. The default is a 100% opacity, but you can reduce the value for opacity in order to fade back the text into the background, allowing the background essentially to show through the text. And below the opacity slider, you'll find color controls. So we have a color swatch for text color. I can click the color swatch and then choose a particular color that I would like to use for my text and click the OK button in order to apply that change. I can also add a text outline, so I'll click the color swatch to select a color for that outline, and then I could increase or decrease the size for the outline around my text. There's also a reverse option, which would literally give us a mirror image for our text, and I can turn on the shadows checkbox if I would like to have a drop shadow. And once you've turned on the shadows checkbox, you can of course specify the color for the shadow. So I'll click the color swatch. You could select a color for that shadow and then click OK to apply that change, and then adjust the overall attributes for the shadow. So the blur slider allows you to increase or decrease the amount of blurring for that shadow, and then you can use the angle distance and distance sliders in order to shift the position of the shadow relative to the text itself. All of that adds up to a wide variety of attributes that you can use to adjust the appearance of any text that you add to a button design.